William Beaumont was a titan, a New York real estate king worth billions. His wife, Genevieve, a brilliant black woman, was the invisible architect who had designed his entire empire. When William publicly humiliated her, trading her for a 22-year-old model, he thought he'd won. He left her with nothing but a single, worthless asset from their past. He forgot one crucial rule: the most dangerous opponent is the one you never saw as a threat. Months later, as his company burned to the ground, one person walked into the boardroom to buy the ashes. And it was her. The air in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Great Hall was thick with the scent of lilies and old money. It was the annual Beaumont Global Foundation Gala. The glittering jewel in New York's philanthropic crown. And at the center of it all stood William Beaumont, a man carved from granite and charisma, his voice booming as he accepted an award. Beside him, slightly in his shadow as always, was his wife, Genevieve Beaumont. Genevieve was a vision of understated power. Draped in a deep sapphire gown, her dark skin glowed under the soft lights. Her hair was swept up elegant and severe, revealing a mind that was constantly silently working. While William played the crowd, Genevieve watched the crowd. She saw which city council member was drinking too much, which rival developer was whispering to his banker, and which of William's board members looked uneasy. For 20 years, Genevieve had been the engine, and William had been the hood ornament. She was the strategist, the analyst, the one who saw the subtle shifts in the market. He was the salesman, the face, the one who took the bows. It was a partnership that had built Beaumont Global from a single dingy office into a $50 billion hospitality and real estate empire. And I, of course, share this with my beautiful wife, Genevieve, William said, gesturing to her. The applause was polite. Genevieve smiled, a practiced, perfect curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. She knew her role. Later, during the cocktail hour, she approached him. William, a word. He was laughing with Gregory Hines, his sycophantic chief operating officer. Not now, Jennen. Can't you see I'm networking? It's about the Verve acquisition, she said softly, but with a steel edge. Gregory's projections are optimistic. Their bleeding watch and their user base is all bots. It's a vanity purchase, Will. A black hole. William's smile tightened. He put a heavy, proprietary hand on her shoulder. Darling, he said, his voice loud enough for Gregory and a few others to hear. You know what I love about you. Your passion. But you're worried about the wrong things. He turned to Gregory. She thinks Verve is a black hole. Can you believe it? I tell her it's not about the balance sheet. It's about the buzz. Gregory chuckled. Exactly, boss. We need to be in the media game. It's synergy. Synergy, Genevieve countered, her voice dropping to a near whisper, is not a business model. The debt we'd have to take on would jeopardize the London project. William's patience snapped. The charm evaporated, revealing the cold arrogance beneath. Genevieve, please, stick to what you're good at. The seating charts for this event are wonderful. Truly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to talk to people who understand a 9-figure deal. He didn't just dismiss her. He humiliated her. He turned his back, leaving her standing alone as Gregory smirked. The message was clear. You are the help. I am the master. Genevieve's face remained serene, a mask of aristocratic calm. But inside a gear that had been grinding for years, finally clicked into place. She didn't react. She simply turned her sapphire dress, whispering over the marble, and walked away. As she retrieved a glass of champagne, she saw him, William at the far end of the hall was cornered, or rather he had allowed himself to be cornered. The woman he was speaking to was barely 22, poured into a red dress that looked more painted on than worn. Her name, Genevieve knew from the event dossier, was Katya Petrova, a C-list model with an A-list ambition. Genevieve watched as William, her husband of 2 decades, leaned in. She watched him laugh, a genuine, unguarded laugh she hadn't heard directed at her in years. She watched him place a hand on the small of Katya's back. It wasn't a friendly touch. It was a claim. And Katya, in turn, looked up at him. Her eyes wide, with a manufactured adoration that was as transparent as it was effective. She saw a walking, talking American Express black card. Genevieve took a slow, deliberate sip of her champagne. The bubbles tasted like ash. It wasn't the infidelity that struck her. That was old, tired, and predictable. It was the public nature of it. The disrespect. He wasn't just cheating. He was replacing. He had dismissed her mind and her body in the same 5-minute span. She looked at her husband, the man-god of the New York skyline, and she felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger. Just assessment. The way she would look at a building she was about to buy, analyzing its foundations, its potential, and most importantly, its weaknesses. And William Beaumont, she realized, was a skyscraper built on a fault line. The affair was not a secret. It was a statement. Within a week, Page 6 had them. Beaumont's new billion-dollar babe. The photos were grainy, taken outside the trendy Tribeca restaurant Carbone. William, 55, had his arm wrapped tightly around Katya, 22, who was laughing and tossing her blonde hair. He looked the columnists crowed, rejuvenated. Genevieve saw the papers delivered to their penthouse apartment on Park Avenue. The staff, the same staff she had hired and treated with kindness for 15 years, couldn't meet her eye. She sat at the long breakfast table, the New York skyline sprawling before her, and read the article with the same focus she gave a quarterly report. That night, William came home late, smelling of Katya's heavy perfume, a sickly sweet gardenia. "You're being sloppy, William," Genevieve said, not looking up from her laptop. She was sitting in the grand salon, the lights of the city twinkling behind her. "Sloppy I'm living, Genevieve." "Something you forgot how to do." He ripped off his tie, his face flushed with champagne and self-satisfaction. "Living," she echoed, "or just unraveling. The press is a distraction, and you're pushing the Verve deal through the board tomorrow without a final audit." "I am the board, Jen," he snapped, "and the Verve deal is done. We're celebrating. Katya is going to be the new face of the brand. She has ideas. She's fresh. She's not stuck." Stuck. The word hung in the air. "Stuck," Genevieve repeated, "is what you call the anchor that keeps the ship from crashing on the rocks. That Verve deal will cost us $500 million we need to leverage for the Singapore expansion. It's a bad move, Will." "It's my move," he roared. He strode over to her, his shadow falling across her laptop screen. "I'm tired of you with your spreadsheets and your warnings. You're a damn ghost at a feast. I built this company." "We built this company," she corrected him, her voice dangerously quiet. "You just cut the ribbons. I laid the foundations." He laughed, a cruel barking sound. "Foundations. You were a glorified accountant, darling. Don't overestimate your contribution. I am the visionary. And my vision is New. The subtext was clear. New company direction. New woman. So what is this, William? Are you asking for a divorce? He stopped, surprised she had said it first. Then his expression hardened. Yes. Yes, I am. I want a divorce. I'm done. I'm done with this mausoleum. I want life. I want Katya. I'll have my lawyers contact yours in the morning. He expected tears. He expected screaming, pleading a negotiation. Genevieve simply closed her laptop. The soft click echoed in the massive room. Fine, she said. William stared, momentarily thrown. Fine, just fine. You've made your decision. It's a bad one, like the Verve deal, but it's yours to make. She stood up, smoothing the front of her silk blouse. She was, as always, impossibly poised. I'll sleep in the guest wing. Please have your lawyers send all correspondence to my personal email. Good night, William. She walked out of the room, her back perfectly straight. William was left standing in the silent salon, an unsettling feeling of anticlimax creeping over him. He had expected a fight, a satisfying emotional explosion that would justify his actions. He had wanted to conquer her. Instead, she had simply acquiesced. He shook off the feeling. It was guilt, that's all. He poured himself a whiskey. She was probably already calling her mother, crying. Good. It was done. He was free. He picked up his phone and dialed Katya. It's done, baby, he said, his voice dropping into a seductive growl. The old dragon is out. The castle is ours. From the guest wing, Genevieve wasn't crying. She was on her laptop, her screen split into 4. On one side was a complex financial model. On the other, a legal database. On the third, a list of assets. On the fourth, she was composing an email. The recipient was Robert Langley of Langley Capital, an old dear friend from her Wharton MBA program. A man who, like her, had faced the biting winds of prejudice as a black man in a white-dominated field and had built his own fortress. The email was short. Subject, acorn. Body. It's time to activate it. He's done. The divorce was not a war. It was a corporate restructuring, and Genevieve, to the astonishment of William and his battalion of lawyers from Skadden Arps, was utterly compliant. They met in a sterile 80th floor conference room, the city a muted map below. William sat at the head of the table, flanked by 3 pinstriped sharks. Katya was waiting for him in his Bentley downstairs, a public show of support. Genevieve sat alone, her own legal counsel, a sharp woman from a boutique firm sitting beside her. Mrs. Beaumont, Genevieve, William's lead lawyer began. We are pleased you've decided to be reasonable. William is prepared to be very generous. Generous meant the Hamptons estate, the apartment in Paris, and a lump sum of $50 million. In a $50 billion empire, it was a rounding error. It was an insult. Genevieve listened patiently, her hands folded on the polished mahogany. The assets are fine, she said, her voice clear and cool. But the lump sum is not. I'm not taking a cash settlement. That William, who had been impatiently checking his watch, looked up. What? Don't be ridiculous, Genevieve. Take the money. I don't want your money, William, she said, looking him directly in the eye. I want a piece of the company. His lawyers stiffened. That is a non-starter, one of them said. Beaumont Global is not on the table. I'm not talking about Beaumont Global, Genevieve said. I want Acorn Partners. The room fell silent. William and his lawyers looked at each other, utterly bewildered. William actually laughed. Acorn. You want Acorn Partners, the LLC we started in our 20s. It was our first company, Genevieve said simply. It's a shell, Genevieve. It's worthless, William said, exasperated. It has no assets, no contracts, nothing. We haven't used it in 19 years. It's literally just a name on a piece of paper in a file cabinet. Nevertheless, Genevieve's lawyer chimed in. That is her request. She will take the Paris apartment, the Hamptons estate, and 100% ownership of the Acorn Partners LLC. In exchange, she waives all other claims to Beaumont Global, its subsidiaries, and any future earnings. William's lead lawyer, a man named Harris, was suspicious. He leaned over to William. Let us check the asset registry. There must be something in it. A bank account, a property deed. There's nothing, William hissed back. It was a consulting firm we used to file our taxes before we incorporated the main company. It's sentimental nonsense. She's being a difficult, emotional woman. Fine. Give it to her. If she wants a worthless souvenir, let her have it. It gets her out of my hair for cheap. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. Give her the acorn. Give her the houses. Get it done. He pointed a finger at Genevieve. But you sign an ironclad NDA. You will never speak my name or the company's name in public. You're a ghost. Understand? Genevieve stood as well. She was, for a moment, taller than he felt. You'll have your signature, William. And you, she said, a flicker of something pity perhaps in her eyes, can have her. She turned and walked out, her lawyer following. William and his team were ecstatic. They were celebrating. He had shed his ball and chain wife for pennies on the dollar. He had gotten away with it. He was on top of the world. He ran down to the waiting. Bentley scooped Katya up and kissed her for the paparazzi. That evening, in a nondescript office building in Midtown, Genevieve met Robert Langley. He was holding a single, newly printed stock certificate. Phoenix Holdings, he said, is now officially the parent company of Acorn Partners. And you, my friend, are the 100% shareholder. Genevieve took the certificate. How quickly can we move? Robert grinned, a flash of white in his dark beard. You're joking, right? The machine is already built, Jen. You just gave us the key. What did he miss, Robert? What did those high-priced idiots at Skadden miss? Robert pointed to a framed document on his wall. It looked like a patent. They ran an asset check. They looked for bank accounts and property. They didn't run an intellectual property audit. He explained. 20 years ago, when Acorn Partners was their only company, a young, brilliant Genevieve had single-handedly coded a revolutionary piece of software. It was a hospitality management system designed to integrate bookings, housekeeping room service, and supply chain management into one seamless platform. She called it Aura. When they formed Beaumont Global, Aura became the digital backbone of the entire hotel chain. But the ownership of the software, the copyright and patent, was never legally transferred from Acorn Partners to Beaumont Global. It was a simple oversight, a mistake made in the heady rush of early success. For 20 years, Beaumont Global had been using its own most valuable piece of IP, the very software that ran its multi-billion-dollar operation on an unlicensed basis. William, in his arrogance, had just given the legal owner of his company's entire operating system to the one person on Earth who knew it. He didn't just give you a souvenir, Genevieve, Robert said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. He gave you the gun, the bullets, and a signed confession. Genevieve took the glass. He thinks I'm a ghost. That's fine. She looked out the window, not at a penthouse view, but at the gritty, real streets of the city. Ghosts can be very, very patient, and they know exactly where all the bodies are buried. The next 3 months were a study in contrasts. William Beaumont was living a public, gaudy fantasy. He and Katya were inseparable. They were at every opening, every party. He officially named her creative director of the newly acquired Verve Media, a title that came with a $2 million salary and an unlimited expense account. Her first move was to greenlight a docu-series about her own life as an influencer at a cost of $30 million. She redecorated the Park Avenue penthouse in white fur and mirrored glass, a style Page Six dubbed Kardashian kitsch. She demanded a pink Bentley, and William, drunk on his new life, bought it for her. Beaumont Global, meanwhile, was beginning to stagger under the weight of its CEO's ego. The Verve acquisition was, as Genevieve had predicted, a financial abyss. It was losing $50 million a quarter. To cover the losses and fund Katya's projects, William made a series of rash, desperate moves. He leveraged the company's core assets, the flagship hotels in New York and London, to take out high-interest loans from a hedge fund. He was also pushing forward on a massive new hotel project in a politically unstable developing nation, a project Genevieve had repeatedly vetoed for being too high risk. He saw it as his new legacy. The board, cowed by his past successes and bullied by Gregory Hines, rubber-stamped the decision. William had never felt more powerful. He was free of Genevieve's pessimism, her constant nagging calls for due diligence. Meanwhile, 40 blocks south in an unflashy office tower, Genevieve Beaumont, who now went by her maiden name. Genevieve Dubois was in a deep state of work. She and Robert Langley had used the Acorn, now Phoenix Holdings IP, as collateral to secure a massive line of credit from a syndicate of private equity firms Robert had cultivated for years, all of them eager to back a black-owned venture with a guaranteed kill shot. But Genevieve wasn't just planning a lawsuit. She was building a competitor. "He thinks Aura is just software," she explained to her new hand-picked team of engineers, all poached from Google and Amazon. "He doesn't realize it's a data mine. For 20 years, Aura has been collecting data on every single guest, every single supplier, every single market fluctuation in the luxury hotel space. We know what his guests eat when they travel, how much they'll pay, and what they're afraid of. He's been building my weapon for me." For 3 months, they worked. They didn't just update Aura. They rebuilt it from the ground up, creating Aura 2.0. It was faster, smarter, and predictive. It used AI to anticipate guest needs before the guest even knew them. It was simply the single most advanced hospitality platform ever created. While William was buying pink cars, Genevieve was filing patents. By month 4, they were ready. Phoenix Holdings did not, as William might have expected, sue him. That was too slow. Instead, Genevieve and Robert launched their new company, Evo Hotels. It wasn't a hotel chain. It was a tech platform for hotel chains. They offered Aura 2.0 to Beaumont Global's main competitors, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, the Four Seasons of the world. Their sales pitch was simple and brutal. "Your competitor Beaumont Global is running on obsolete 20-year-old technology. We can cut your operating costs by 30% and increase your repeat customer bookings by 50% in 6 months. We know because we have their data." The market, which had been growing weary of Beaumont's erratic behavior, jumped. One by one, Beaumont's rivals signed on. Evo Hotels became the talk of the industry, a disruptive unicorn seemingly out of nowhere. With billions in new contracts pouring in, Genevieve made her second move. She didn't have to look for Beaumont Global's debt. She knew exactly which hedge fund held it. She'd told William not to do business with them years ago. Phoenix Holdings began to quietly, anonymously buy that debt. Every time William defaulted on an interest payment to fund Katya's reality show. It was Genevieve's new company that bought the note from the increasingly nervous lenders. She was no longer just the owner of his software. She was becoming his banker, his landlord, his executioner. William, oblivious, was in the south of France, on a yacht with Katya filming for her show. He was annoyed by this new Avo company. "Gregory," he slurred over a bad satellite line. "Send these Avo people a cease and desist. They're stealing our look. Send them a lawsuit. Send them something. Handle it." Gregory Hines, back in New York, and sweating as he looked at the disastrous quarterly numbers, knew a lawsuit was pointless. He just didn't know why it was pointless. Not yet. The first domino fell on a Tuesday. William was in a preliminary hearing with the board, trying to explain why the Verve losses were temporary and why the stock had dipped 15%. Gregory was presenting a slideshow full of meaningless buzzwords when William's chief legal counsel burst into the room, his face pale. "William, we have a problem. A big one." "Not now, Johnson, I'm in a meeting." "It is this meeting, sir. We just received a cease and desist letter. It's about the Aura software." William scoffed. "Aura who from that Avo pest?" "No, sir." Johnson said, his hands shaking as he held the paper. "It's from an LLC called Acorn Partners." William's blood ran cold. "What? That's impossible. That's Genevieve." "They are claiming, sir," Johnson said, reading the legalese, "that Beaumont Global has been engaged in flagrant and willful copyright infringement for 19 years. They are the legal and sole owners of the Aura platform. They are demanding we cease and desist all use of the platform immediately." "That's absurd," William roared. "It's my company, my software." "Is it, sir?" Johnson asked. "We've had the team in the archives. The original patent and copyright were filed in the name of Acorn Partners. It was never transferred. We don't own it." The room spun. Gregory Hines looked like he was going to be sick. "What does this mean?" a board member asked. "It means," William said, his voice a low growl, "that my ex-wife is trying to extort me. Fine. Pay her. Give her whatever she wants, a few million. Pay her, and make this go away." "We tried that," Johnson said, swallowing. "We called the counsel on the letter. They said their client is not interested in a licensing deal." "Not interested?" William shouted. "What does that mean?" "It means," came a new voice from the doorway, "exactly what it says." Genevieve Dubois walked into the room. She was not the quiet, sapphire-gowned wife they remembered. She was flanked by Robert Langley and a team of lawyers. She wore a crimson-red power suit, her hair short and sharp. She radiated an energy that was so cold it burned. "Genevieve," William sputtered. "What is the meaning of this? You can't just walk in here." "I can," she said, her voice cutting through the panic. "As the representative of your primary technology vendor, I'm here to inform you that your license to operate has been revoked." She nodded to one of her lawyers, who placed a briefcase on the table and opened a laptop. What are you doing, Tom?" Gregory stammered. "The Aura platform is cloud-based, gentlemen," Genevieve said. "We hold the keys, and at 5:00 p.m. today, in exactly 2 hours, we are shutting you down." The boardroom erupted. "You can't," a board member shouted. "That would be suicide. It would destroy the company." No, Genevieve said. It would destroy William's stake in the company. The assets, the buildings, the land are still valuable. They just won't be operational. You'll bankrupt us. This is insane. William lunged forward. This is my company, you bitch. You did this to me. You did this to yourself, William, Genevieve said, not flinching. You gave me the weapon. You called it sentimental. You called me stuck. She turned to the terrified board. Shutting down Aura means every booking you have worldwide will be cancelled. Every key card will be deactivated. Every supply order will stop. Your hotels will go dark tonight. You have one alternative. She nodded to Robert. He projected a new document onto the main screen. It was an offer. Phoenix Holdings, Robert announced, is prepared to make an emergency tender offer to buy Beaumont Global, its assets and its debts, for $10 billion. $10 billion, Gregory shrieked. We're worth 50. You were worth 50, Genevieve corrected him. You're currently worth nothing, because you are a $50 billion hotel chain that can't rent a single room. You're a real estate company with no real. The $10 billion is a generous offer for the brick and mortar. And it's the only offer you're going to get. The board will never accept this, William yelled. This is a hostile takeover. It's not a takeover, William, Genevieve said. It's a foreclosure. She turned to the board members. You have until 5:00 p.m. If I have not received a signed letter of intent from all of you, the servers go dark. And tomorrow, we will file a $30 billion lawsuit for 2 decades of copyright theft, naming every one of you as co-conspirators in the fraud. Your decision. She turned her red suit a slash of color against the grey-faced men and walked out of the room, leaving absolute desolation in her wake. The boardroom became a pressure cooker. The facade of corporate civility evaporated, replaced by raw, primal fear. He gave her the IP. One board member, a grizzled old money investor named Henderson, bellowed. You gave your ex-wife the keys to the entire kingdom as a divorce present. William, for the first time in his life, was cornered. He was sweating through his $5,000 suit. It was a mistake, an oversight. She tricked me. She didn't trick you, you colossal idiot, Henderson roared. You were too busy running around with that child to do your job, Gregory. You're his COO. You knew about this Aura software. Why wasn't this in our risk assessment? Gregory Hines was trying to melt into his chair. I assumed we owned it. It was an in-house system. You assumed, Henderson spat. You're paid $8 million a year to not assume, Johnson the lawyer interrupted. Gentlemen, the accusations. They're not wrong. Our liability here it's astronomical. She's right. She could sue us all into personal bankruptcy. The clock on the wall ticked. 10 p.m. What about the hedge fund? William said, grasping at straws. The loans we can declare bankruptcy. Chapter 11, restructure. We can lock her out in court. I already made that call, Johnson said, his voice grim. The hedge fund, they sold our debt. Sold it to who? They wouldn't disclose, but the new lien holder has already filed a notice of default. They're calling in the entire $8 billion note, effective immediately. It was a pincer move, a financial blitzkrieg. Genevieve wasn't just coming at them from the front with the IP. She was coming from behind with the debt. She owned their front door and their back door. My God, Henderson breathed, sinking into his chair. She's got us. She's got us completely. He looked at William with a new, profound hatred. It was her, wasn't it? The new line holder. Phoenix Holdings. Johnson just nodded. The fight went out of the room. It was no longer a negotiation. It was a surrender. "She's offering $10 billion, a mousy board member whispered. "The company is leveraged to hell. After she pays off the debt, she owns. That leaves almost nothing for shareholders. We'll be wiped out." "We are already wiped out." Henderson slammed his fist on the table. "Right now, we are a public company 1 hour and 45 minutes away from being worth zero. Our only choice is to accept the $10 billion, save the assets, and live to fight another day." All in favor of accepting the Phoenix Holdings offer. One by one, hands went up. Reluctant, shaking, furious hands. William just sat there, numb. "No," he whispered. "No, I won't let her. I won't. It's not your choice anymore." "Will," Henderson said, his voice dripping with contempt, "you're the man who killed Beaumont Global. Get him out of here." "What? Get him out. His presence here is a liability. Gregory, you're fired. Get out. Johnson, draw up the letter of intent. Accept the offer. And for God's sake, do it before 500 p.m. William was speechless. You can't." "Security," Henderson yelled. 2 guards entered the room. "Mr. Henderson, Mr. Beaumont is leaving the building. Permanently." The guards approached William. "Sir, don't you touch me," he roared. "This is my building. My name is on the wall." "Not anymore, it isn't," Henderson said. "Take him." They grabbed his arms. William Beaumont, the Titan of New York, was physically dragged out of his own boardroom, shouting and struggling. "You'll hear from my lawyers. This isn't over. Genevieve. Genevieve." His voice echoed down the hall, and then was gone. In the lobby of the building, Katya Petrova was waiting, scrolling through Instagram. She was annoyed. William was late for their tasting at the new Nobu. She saw the elevator doors open, and William being marched out by security, his hair wild, his jacket torn. "Will, baby," she called out, confused. "What's going on?" William looked at her, his eyes wild with failure and rage. He saw for the first time not a fresh, exciting woman, but a vapid, expensive 22-year-old liability, the root of his ruin. "You," he seethed. "This is your fault. You and your show. You ruined me." "What?" she shrieked as people in the lobby stared. "I didn't do anything. You're a mess." She saw the fire in his eyes was gone, replaced by a black hole. The money was gone. She realized it instantly. Her face, which had been a mask of adoration, hardened into something cold and practical. "My purse is still in the Bentley," she said flatly. She turned, walked out. The revolving doors got into the pink car and told the driver to take her back to the penthouse. She had jewelry to pack. William was left standing on the curb, disheveled alone, as the security guards locked the doors behind him. Upstairs at 4:58 p.m., the signed letter of intent was emailed to Robert Langley. The next morning, the sun rose over Manhattan, but it failed to penetrate the oppressive gloom that had settled over the Beaumont Global headquarters. The building, usually a hive of kinetic, high-stakes energy, was a tomb. Employees who had braved the commute spoke in hushed whispers in the lobby, avoiding eye contact. The news of William's removal from the boardroom had ripped through the corporate grapevine, a seismic shock that had left only terrified uncertainty in its wake. They were a company adrift. Their god-king had been deposed. Their stock was worthless. Their COO was gone. And the new owner, this Phoenix Holdings, was a mystery. Rumors were rampant that a rival had bought them for scrap, that mass layoffs were coming before lunch, that the entire company was being dissolved. At 9:00 a.m., An email from an unknown internal address landed in every inbox. It was stark and simple. Mandatory all-hands meeting in the main atrium. 10:00 a.m. No exceptions. The atrium was a 4-story canyon of glass and Italian marble built to showcase William's power. By 9:50 a.m., it was packed shoulder to shoulder. Hundreds of employees, from the pale-faced VPs in their bespoke suits to the anxious service staff in their crisp uniforms, gathered under the massive, useless B logo that hung suspended from the ceiling. The air was thick with a collective dread, the silence broken only by nervous coughs and the shuffling of feet. Backstage in a holding room, Genevieve Dubois stood before a monitor showing the crowded floor. Robert Langley stood beside her, holding a folder. "That's a full house," Robert said quietly. "They look terrified." "They have a right to be," Genevieve said. She smoothed the lapel of her crimson suit. It was the same one she had worn for the hostile takeover. It was her armor. "They've been living under a tyrant who valued ego over stability. They don't know what's next." "Are you ready for this, Genton?" he asked, not as a business partner, but as a friend. Genevieve took a deep, centering breath. This wasn't just a building. It was a part of her life she had been forced to abandon. She was about to face people she had known for years, some who had pitied her, some who had feared her husband, and some who had eagerly participated in his toxic culture. This wasn't a victory lap. It was an exorcism. "He called me a ghost," she said, her voice a low, hard blade. "Let's see how they react to a ghost that takes the podium." At 10:00 a.m. on the dot, the heavy glass doors to the atrium slid open. The crowd went utterly silent. The remaining board members, led by a grey-faced and visibly diminished Henderson, walked in first, but they didn't walk toward the podium. In a move of staggering symbolic power, they filed to the side, standing meekly against the marble wall like chastened schoolboys. Then Genevieve walked in. She was flanked by Robert Langley and a small, sharp-eyed executive team, the people she had cultivated in secret at Phoenix Holdings. The sound of her heels on the marble was a sharp, solitary click, 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 a sound that seemed to cut through the suffocating silence. A collective audible gasp swept through the atrium. It was a sound of profound, disbelieving recognition. They knew her. But this was not the Mrs. Beaumont they remembered, the quiet, elegant wife in the background, the one who planned the galas and was dismissed at cocktail parties. This woman was a stranger. Her hair was short and sharp. Her suit was a slash of defiant color, and her face was a mask of calm, absolute authority. She didn't just walk. She advanced. Whispers erupted. "Is that—" "My God, it's her. It's Genevieve." She ascended the steps to the podium, the same podium from which William had delivered his arrogant, self-congratulatory speeches for 20 years. She arranged a single sheet of paper in front of her, then looked up, her gaze sweeping across the hundreds of faces staring back at her. She didn't smile. "Good morning," she said. Her voice, no longer the soft alto they remembered, was amplified by the microphone, clear and powerful, filling the vast space with an energy that commanded attention. "My name is Genevieve Dubois. Many of you knew me by another name. That name and the era it represented is part of the past. As of 5:00 p.m. yesterday, my company Phoenix Holdings has acquired a controlling interest in Beaumont Global. This company is now under new management, my management." The crowd was frozen. This wasn't a rival. This was a resurrection. "I know many of you are scared," she continued, her voice devoid of false sympathy. "You have every right to be. You've watched the stock price plummet. You've seen wasteful spending on vanity projects drain your resources. You've seen good, profitable projects, like the London expansion, mismanaged into near failure, while ego-driven acquisitions like Verve Media have been allowed to bleed this company dry. You've seen arrogance valued over diligence. You've seen loyalty to one man valued over the health of the entire organization. I am here to tell you, those days are over. A current of electricity passed through the crowd. This wasn't a corporate platitude. It was a diagnosis. Effective immediately, Verve Media is being dissolved. Its assets will be liquidated to cover the severances of its employees. A few gasps, but more prominent was the wave of silent, vindicated nods. Effective immediately, Gregory Hines has been terminated for cause. This time, a few people in the finance department actually clapped before catching themselves. Genevieve paused, letting the weight of her next words settle. This was the one that mattered. This was the head of the snake. And effective immediately, William Beaumont has been removed as CEO and from the board of directors. He holds no position, no shares, and no authority in this company. His name will be removed from this building by the end of the week. The shock was absolute. It was one thing to hear a rumor. It was another to hear the king officially, publicly, and totally dethroned. The finality of it was brutal. I am not a stranger to this company, Genevieve said, her voice softening, just a fraction becoming personal. She looked toward the long-timers, the operations staff, the finance analysts who had been there from the start. I was here at the beginning. I wrote the first lines of code for the Aura platform on a second-hand computer in a one-room apartment 20 years ago. I know the foundation of this business because I laid it. Her eyes found a concierge manager she'd known for a decade. I have watched for the last several years as that foundation was allowed to rot. No more. Oh, she stood up straight, shifting from the past to the future. We are going to rebuild, but we are rebuilding on truth, not ego. The Aura 2.0 platform, the most advanced hospitality tech in the world, will be implemented across all properties starting today. Our debt is being restructured. The failed project in Dubai is cancelled. The London and Singapore projects are back on track, fully funded, as of this morning. She leaned forward, her eyes scanning the sea of faces. This will be a difficult transition. We will be auditing every department. There will be changes. We will value competence, loyalty, and innovation. We will not value sycophants, yes-men, or bullies. If you are here to work hard and be part of a team that is the best in the world, you have a future here. If you are here to collect a check while contributing nothing, the door is that way. We have too much work to do to carry dead weight. She gathered her single paper and squared it on the podium. My name is Genevieve Dubois. I am your new CEO, and I am very, very happy to be back. She looked at them, a final appraising gaze. Let's get to work. For a full 5 seconds, there was absolute stunned silence. The employees stood motionless, processing the regime change. It was a void. Then from the front row, a sound, a single pair of hands, a woman in a dark grey housekeeping uniform. A woman who had worked in the flagship hotel for 15 years. Began to clap. Her applause was slow, rhythmic, and clear in the silence. She had seen William's tantrums cleaned up after his parties and been treated as invisible by him and his cronies for a decade. She looked at Genevieve with tears in her eyes. Then another person clapped. A finance analyst, then a concierge, then a VP in the back. Within 10 seconds, the silence was broken. A trickle of applause turned into a wave, and then the wave became a roar. The entire atrium erupted in thunderous, spontaneous applause. It wasn't just for Genevieve. It was a catharsis. It was a roar of relief, of hope, of justice finally served. Genevieve stood at the podium, and for the first time let a small, genuine smile touch her lips. The Queen had returned, and the empire was finally hers. The thunder of applause in the atrium eventually faded, but its echo remained. It was the sound of a staff shifting from fear to a fragile, cautious hope. The story, however, didn't end with that climactic moment of return. The takeover was a single, brutalist act. The reconstruction would be 1,000 quiet, methodical ones. Genevieve was not a monarch ascending a throne. She was an architect, returning to a condemned building she had designed, ready to shore up the foundations. In the weeks that followed, Genevieve Dubois was a study in controlled energy. She lived in her office, working 18-hour days, fueled by black coffee and a relentless drive for precision. Her mind a steel trap that William had long taken for granted was now fully engaged. She moved through the company like a surgeon identifying the rot and cutting it out with clean, decisive strokes. She personally presided over the dissolution of Verve Media. She sat in a sterile conference room, her face impassive as the flashy, overpaid executives, all hired by Gregory Hines, tried to defend their astronomical budgets and non-existent results. "This $30 million docu-series," she said, holding up a single-page summary, her voice lethally quiet. "It has 0 distribution deals, and the raw footage appears to be 6 terabytes of Ms. Petrova shopping in Milan. This isn't a business. It's a vanity bonfire. Your positions are redundant. HR will process your severances." She was just as decisive in her affirmations. She dug through personnel files and found the name Sarah Jenkins, a brilliant data-driven analyst in the London office, whom William had personally fired 6 months prior. Her crime, her models had accurately predicted the Verve deal would be a catastrophe. Genevieve flew her to New York first class. "Ms. Jenkins," Genevieve said, meeting her in the executive lounge, "I've read your projections from last March. They were perfect. William called you a pessimistic bean counter. I call you prescient. I'm restructuring the executive team. I want you to be my chief strategy officer." Sarah, who had been working a temp job, burst into tears. This was the new order. Competence was the only currency. The company, which had been a lumbering, debt-ridden dinosaur, was reborn. The name Beaumont Global was toxic, a monument to one man's ego. Genevieve buried it. She rebranded the entire entity as Evo Global, a name derived from the Latin avum, meaning age or era. It was the start of a new era. With the Aura 2.0 platform powering its core, Evo Global became the darling of Wall Street. It was sleek, tech-forward, and profitable. The stock didn't just recover, it soared. And William? William became a ghost just as he had tried to make her. He was buried not in an office, but in an avalanche of lawsuits from investors, vendors, and the board he had duped. Katya, whose loyalty had the shelf life of fresh milk, had vanished. The second the corporate accounts were frozen, she had cleaned out the penthouse of its jewelry, art, and bearer bonds, and was last seen in Miami, attached to a 19-year-old cryptocurrency speculator. William lost the penthouse to the banks. He lost the Hamptons estate. He lost the jet. He lost, most devastatingly, his name. He was no longer Beaumont the Titan. He was William Beaumont, the disgraced former CEO. He was seen once 6 months later by a New York Post reporter. The irony was bitter. The same gossip column that had gleefully chronicled his affair with Katya now hunted him for scraps of his downfall. He wasn't at Carbone. He was at a dimly lit bar in Murray Hill at 2:00 in the afternoon, his $5,000 suit hopelessly rumpled. He was haggard, unshaven, and arguing with the bartender over a 12 well whiskey. When the reporter approached, flashing a camera, William flinched like a startled animal. The reporter asked for a comment on his ex-wife's staggering historic success with Evo Global. William stared at him, his eyes red-rimmed and unfocused. The charisma was gone. The booming voice, a hoarse whisper. She stole it. He slurred the words thick with self-pity. It was mine. I built it. It was all mine. He remained what he had always been, a man, so blinded by his own reflection, he'd mistaken the sun for a light bulb. That same evening, the final act played out. Genevieve stood in her new office. It was William's old office, but it was unrecognizable. The heavy, dark mahogany and the ostentatious displays of his own magazine covers were gone. Now the space was filled with glass, steel, and light. The walls were a soft, calming white, adorned with abstract art by black female artists. She was overlooking Central Park, the city lights just beginning to glitter like a carpet of diamonds as dusk settled. Robert Langley knocked on the open door. "Got a minute?" "Always Robert," she said, not looking away from the window. He walked in carrying 2 glasses of scotch and handed one to her. "It's done," he said. She took a sip, the smoky liquid a familiar comfort. "What's done?" "The final liquidation of William's personal assets. The last of the auction proceeds just cleared. After all the debts, the lawsuits, he's left with nothing. Not just fired nothing, Jen. I mean 0. He paused, then added, "Our New Jersey office got a resume this morning. He's applying for a mid-level consultant position. He'll be reporting to someone you hired 2 months ago." Genevieve was silent for a long time. The city blinked back at her. This was it. The final definitive closing of a 20-year ledger. It wasn't triumph she felt. It wasn't joy. It was quiet. The quiet of a storm that has finally passed. "Do you feel avenged?" Robert asked softly, watching her expression in the reflection of the glass. Genevieve finally turned. A small, complex smile touched her lips. "Avenged, no, Robert. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge is an emotion, it's messy. This was a correction. A market correction. He's broken, Jen. He has nothing. He was always broken," she said, her voice clear, without malice. "He just had enough money to hide the cracks. He saw me as a possession, then as a nuisance, then as a ghost. He never, not once, saw me as his equal." She set her glass down. "And in business, if you underestimate your competition, you lose. That's all this was. He lost." She picked up her briefcase, the movement brisk, professional. All business. "You ready for dinner? My treat." Robert grinned, the warmth returning to his eyes. "Always." "Where are we going?" "The new spot by the park." Genevieve walked to the door, her heels clicking softly on the new hardwood floor. She turned off the light in the office that had once been her prison, plunging the room into the soft twilight. "Carbone," she said, a flicker of a true smile playing on her lips. "I'm told it's a lovely spot." And that's the story of how a king, blinded by arrogance and greed, handed the keys to his empire to the queen he thought he had banished. Genevieve Dubois didn't just get revenge, she got justice. She proved that the person they overlook, the person they underestimate, is often the one holding all the power. She didn't just buy his empire, she reminded the world that she was the one who built it in the first place. What did you think of William's downfall? Was he his own worst enemy? Or was Katya the final push he needed to fail? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of karma and ultimate justice, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to see a powerful comeback. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more stories where the overlooked get the last laugh. We see you, we appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next one.